Hey guys, and welcome back to the You Can't Sit With Us podcast. We are super excited to be here. We appreciate the love and the support that you guys have shown thus far. If you haven't checked us out, go to Facebook, You Can't Sit With Us podcast. Give us a like and follow. You can find us on Instagram at You Can't Sit With Us pod. And we have an official YouTube channel where we'll be dropping all of our content, You Can't Sit With Us podcast. So head over there, hit like and subscribe. So what Kelly and I thought we would do, we want to share each episode a fun fact about ourselves so you guys can get to know us. And so my fun fact is I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, wow. Oh, we're going there. Okay, I guess to parallel that a little bit, I was in public school with you up until the 8th grade, and then I went to a private Christian school. So I graduated from a private Christian school.
So how was that like? You guys grew up around the same place, but kind of grew up so differently. So how was it you being in a private Christian school?
It probably kept me out of a fair amount of trouble. And I tell people that all the time. I probably did not get in as much trouble as I would have. And it definitely kept me away from really sketchy people I was starting to hang around in public school. However, it did not take me long to realize that... and I'll just say this without being really ugly about it. There are more politics in a Christian school than there are in a public school. Or at least there were back then. I have a child in private school now, and I have not experienced that amount of that yet. And I'm not saying that I ever will. But again, the politics as far as what's okay for people who attend that church versus people who don't, or how much money parents give to that particular school versus parents who are just struggling to pay tuition. It's very different. It's very. I learned a lot about how to treat people inside that Christian school, but I also learned about how you don't treat people. So I do say it was probably one of the better things my parents ever did for me, because I did graduate being able to quote a fair amount of scripture and defend my faith. But on the flip side of that, I also had my eyes wide open to it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I'll just leave it at that. Probably not what anybody wanted to hear, but you know what? I graduated with 19 people, and if y'all want to come and defend your stance, or if you want to come and get behind me on mine, we probably all 19 of us had very different experiences there. And I'm not saying for one second I don't value the relationships that I built there, because again, when you graduate with 19 people, we were like brothers and sisters. We still are. We still come together and reconnect when something happens to one of us, and we have each other's backs. However, the experience from the faculty all the way down to the administration was quite different. The experience was quite different for me, and I don't know if it's still that way. I'm just telling you what my experience was.
So, Erin, you said you grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. I don't know much about them. I know they knock on people's doors, but that's about it. So, could you give us a little more background, how that works for you?
Yeah,
people's doors.
Well, it's really a lot to unpack. You know, when you are as a child, you think that your parents have your best interest, and they do, but you believe everything that they share with you. And I do want to preface all of this and say, this is based on my experiences having been raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
And if it's how you feel, you're not wrong.
No,
that's
not
the thing.
at all.
It's like
Not
the things that led you to get there may be
right.
incorrect, but
Yeah.
if it's how you feel about certain things, you're not wrong. And I have to stress that to my children all day. So I completely understand what you're saying there.
Well, for one, so let's back up a little bit. In our introductory episode, Kelly and I talked about where we were raised and how we were raised and what it was like for us growing up in a small town. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and I don't have anything to compare it to. I can only tell you what it was like to have been raised where we were raised in Kinston. Mm-hmm. And my parents moved back to Kinston in 1987, and I was 10 years old, and it was kind of like the odds were already stacked against you, because unless you grew up in that town and you went to pre-K all the way to the point that I came in fourth grade, you're pretty much an outsider. Okay, so let's add another level to that. Not only was I an outsider coming in the middle of fourth grade year, my parents came in the middle of the year, so we were like right around, I think, right after Christmas. You also are different because Jehovah's Witnesses beliefs in the way that's set up. And you mentioned about not really knowing anything about Jehovah's Witnesses other than they knock on doors. That is mostly what people know about Jehovah's Witnesses, that they're these really nice, well-dressed people that just come knocking on your door. But when it comes down to the belief system, so as a child, so Jehovah's Witnesses do not celebrate birthdays. They do not celebrate Christmas. They do not celebrate Easter. They do not celebrate anything that you would consider man-made. So like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day.
This is so crazy to me because I don't think I knew this until we were adults about you.
I don't think a lot of people knew, and I
still swear Teddy's your brother. We're gonna we're
gonna unpack that too.
We're gonna cover that.
Yeah, we're gonna
today.
cover that for sure.
We're getting down.
Well, and I think the difference. Well, I'm trying to think. I think that a lot of people didn't know that I was raised that way. I did not actually celebrate my first real Christmas until I was 40 years old. And my child was 4 before, which I'm thankful that we have the life that we have now and she's had the opportunity to experience those things. But coming into a small community, already being an outsider, then, and as a child, and whether people knew or not or thought it was weird, you feel weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, you go back in January after the Christmas break, and everybody's like, what'd you get for Christmas? What'd you get for Christmas? And you're like, you know, I didn't. Right, I didn't. And that's such a buzzkill for a kid. You know, everybody, and I'll also say that my parents were very good about, I remember one time, you know, it was funny because people, my peers, I guess you could say, other kids in the class would take up for me. People would pick on me or whatever, and then someone would say, leave Aaron alone, you know, he gets stuff all the time, which was true. My mom and dad were good about giving gifts. So it was kind of like, I didn't have to wait till Christmas to get everything that I wanted all year. You know, but I remember before we moved to Kinston, we lived in Jacksonville, actually in Richlands, and I remember when the kids would get ready to go trick-or-treating, you know, everybody had to be in by a certain time, like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, we got to get ready, we got to dress up, we're going trick-or-treat. I'd be out there riding my bicycle, like, where's everybody at? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on? Like, why am I the only kid out here on my bicycle, you know? But, in fact, honestly, I didn't even celebrate Halloween until I was in my 40s. Which I did, you know, me and Madeline's first Halloween, and she was 3 or 4. I dressed up too, and I've done that a few times with her. So, and there's a lot. It's not just about. It's such a small. I hate to use the word tight knit, but you're only allowed to associate with people who are in that. I don't want to say religion or faith because I have some different opinions about that now, but you're only allowed to associate with them. I mean, and it may be different, again, my experience, but you weren't even allowed to associate with family that were not in that faith. So
that's
like I have family that I don't even know because my mom didn't take us around them. You know what I'm saying? Because of that.
What exactly is their belief like? Because I know you said they don't celebrate Christmas, but Christmas is supposed to be a Christian holiday, like the birth of Jesus. So what exactly is the belief of the Jehovah's Witnesses?
So that is also, when you talk about mainstream Christianity, there are some differences, a lot of differences, and I'll try to share as much as I can in the amount of time that we have, and I know that we'll go deeper into this as this podcast continues. But so in mainstream Christianity, right, your focus and your faith is in Jesus, and there's the belief of the Trinity, right? So
the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas in the Jehovah's Witness teachings, we'll say teachings, there is the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, but they do not consider it to be a Trinity. So they don't consider it to be one being. It's all three separate. And they really focus, like the name Jehovah, which is in the Bible. And there was for a while that I did not, I went through some changes, I guess, some of my own deep research and didn't know where I stood on that. But their focus is really on Jehovah as the Father, and then Jesus is the Son, and then the Holy Spirit is what Jehovah uses to accomplish his will, so to speak. I'm actually surprised I still know all this because I've been away from it for so long, and you just kind of...
You don't forget it.
No,
I mean,
don't. You really don't. It's true. You don't.
And again,
you don't forget where you come from.
Go back. No, you don't forget where you come from. But I completely, like, paralleling that with my experience was I had so many teachers shoving religion down my throat every day.
Yes.
By the time you get out of it, you got it. Well, I mean, I had really well-intended teachers, though.
Yes. That
were not just doing it because it was a job, it was a calling for them. And again, it did keep me out of a fair amount of trouble. However, at what expense? Because now I saw, and what I'm able 30 years ago to reflect on now is, yes, you were well-intended. There's no question about that. But you were also judgmental, critical, cynical. I mean, if it didn't fit into your little box, if we didn't fit into your... And we were children. If you didn't fit into your little box of what you thought we should be, then you were ostracized. Just like, I mean, I feel like you probably are. You feel. Yes. I mean, or we were kicked out. I mean, I remember them kicking people out for getting pregnant. When that, okay, I'm not going to say they messed up, okay? Children are never a mistake. However, the one time that you probably needed somebody to show you the love of Christ, you kicked them out.
Right.
So how is...
That's a very valid point.
So when that happens and you're 17, 16 and you watch this happen, yeah, you get scared and you don't do that, but you also get out and you start thinking when you are allowed to critically think when you're outside of that box. Wait a minute.
And it took me a long time.
You're telling me that Jesus is this way, but you just did this.
Correct.
And what you're saying isn't lining up with what you're doing. And
right.
that was my problem when I got out. I got so far away from that and made so many mistakes because of it, because I didn't want to be like those people.
Right.
But I do believe in that Proverbs 22, I think, train up a child in the way they may go. If you give them that foundation, they'll come back to it. But in your case, what's interesting is the foundation you feel like was none of this is cult. Well, this is like a cult.
Yeah, I have absolutely I stand behind that. Start going down that rabbit hole, and we'll talk about that later. There's a few things that I wanted to comment on, like you talked about.
I just think the similarities of us having this forced upon us instead of making our...
And there's a lot of similarities in all of religion. The thing about Jehovah's Witnesses, going back to the belief system, one of the things that they teach that was always very difficult for me to accept as a child, I can remember coming home and I would say, my friend, talking about kids that I'd met at school, and my mom would be like, she would correct me, like, you're a classmate. And that was because we were not allowed to form those friendships with...
That makes me literally want to cry.
Well, and I'll tell you why too, going to their beliefs. So they basically believe that any day now, Jesus is going to roll in with his angels.
He's rolling in.
And he's going to destroy anyone that is not a Jehovah's Witness. You, me, all of us, because we don't practice that faith. And as women, children, everybody, if you are not baptized into their faith, you're going to be destroyed. Okay, so here's the hang up that I have amongst many others. As a child, I couldn't wrap my head around God is love. But you're telling me if my friend at school does not come into this organization, God's going to destroy them? How could God destroy? And then what they would use to, what's the word I'm looking for? Counteract that statement maybe is the flood in Noah's day. Mm-hmm. How that everyone was wiped out except women, children alike, except for the people that were on that, But what I'll also share, and you made a point about being judged, and I really feel like because of the fact that this was hanging over my head my whole life, God's coming. God, or Jesus is coming and he's going to get you, and you better not have a bad thought, and you better not cuss, and you better not. I was like, you know what? If this dude's going to get me, you know what? I'm about to go roll out here and live this life. And that caused me a lot. For me. That caused me a lot of harm that I hadn't really realized until now in my 40s. When I look back over, kids are going to be kids, teenagers are going to be teenagers. Like, see, you were protected in a way at being in the school that you were in, maybe with a group of peers, and it didn't have really anything to do with my friends. I love my friends dearly, but I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna go live this life, and if I'm gonna be destroyed because of it, well, you know what, that's just how I'm gonna go out. So there's so much more really to get into with the, and I'll even say this, even after I left and I went down that rabbit hole, and I think within 2 months I was completely awake. And when I say awake, it's truly like being asleep. You have been taught this from birth, and you suddenly wake up. That's the only way I can describe it. And you're like, oh, I gotta get out of this. And not only do I have to get out of this, I have to save my child and protect my child. And so, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but following that time period, I went to church for a while. And to comment on some of what you said, I went to church for about 3 years here locally to a church, and I visited many churches. I personally am drawn to the big churches with the flashing lights and the MTV Unplugged for Jesus band. Like, that's my jam. I'm really drawn to that. I'm not into, and I know why. I'm not into the traditional churches because it's where I came from, But I attended church for a while, and it took me about 3 years. And one day I was standing out in the lobby of one of these churches, and I said, it's human behavior. You're always going to have those people that, I can't do enough. I'm not good enough. I can't give enough. I can't give enough of my time. Let me, and then you have the people that are on the other side, kind of like I was always, even though I was a Jehovah's Witness, I was always kind of in the middle. I like people who are in the middle. I don't like extremists. No. Don't be way over here, or don't be extremely goody-goody or extremely bad. Let's meet in the middle, So I was standing there one day, and it hit me. I was like, the same behaviors that you're observing in this lobby of the people that you've met here and are the same behaviors of where you come from. Is that how you want to raise your daughter? And I made the decision right then, no, that's not. You can raise, this is my opinion, there are cultures that exist that there is no religion. Yeah. And they raise their children to be good, productive citizens. So why not let me raise my child that way? And if she decides that she wants to explore, fine. But having it shoved down her throat, we're not doing that.
Yeah. And I think that's where I had to get when I left. I had to go out and make a fair amount of mistakes before I learned, this is what I was taught. I mean, I remember having, out of all the teachers we had, and I would, oh my gosh, please do not take this the wrong way if you're listening and you were one of my teachers. I know you did your level best with what you had to work with me. I just remember one time I went to one particular Bible teacher, and I will name him because he probably is one of the key people who changed my life out there. The more I think about it now, his name's Pete Williams. I remember going to him, and I think I was in the 9th, maybe 10th grade when this happened. But there was a mutual pastor that my dad knew, and I don't remember his name. This is bad. But I remember him being a pastor at a church, and Mr. Williams and I knew him, and we would often talk about that. Well, this pastor came out of the closet as gay. And that was back in the 90s when you just didn't do that.
In Kinston.
And no, it won't even Kinston, but it won't far from Kinston. Right. And I'm not going to out that dude either. Period. But I remember going to him and just trying to wrap my head around that. I'm like, how can you be a preacher and be gay? And he told me, he's like, church people are people too. Period. And I have carried that with me. I mean, like from the 9th grade, he's like, church people are people too. And every time somebody does something, because I was really active in church when I was married to Taryn and Evan's father. I was very active in church, and I remember continuously being disappointed and being disappointed, and people were probably disappointed in me. I mean, that's the thing, is church people are people too. We're all people. We all sin. We all fall short of the glory of God. It is what it is. We're not perfect. And I think when you're in church, people expect some level of perfection out of you that just doesn't exist.
You know what? I thought about this just now. My brother told me...
Teddy?
No. My brother... My brother.
So Teddy.
Which most people don't... You know, it's funny. Most people don't even know that I have a brother and sister. But, of course, my brother passed away in 2018. But he told me one time that my dad had this saying, and it was, people are bad, but Jehovah's Witnesses are worse. And what he meant was the most judgmental people that he had ever... And my father... And there's positions in that faith, just like there is in other religions. You know, in other religions it's different terms, like deacons or elders or whatever. I have to say that the Jehovah's Witness organization is really driven by men. Mm-hmm. Like, women
I could see that.
Really...
They're the ones that knock on the door sometimes.
Oh, they both do.
Like on Friday?
Like when it comes to the idea, like submissiveness and headship, I mean, that's really taken to, you know, if you knew the ins and outs of it, and not to get too deep, but their main headquarters is in New York, and they have a group of men that basically have led these folks, 8 million of them, to believe that they are the only people on earth that God talks to. And so they are...
Because if you can't look at our children and tell you God doesn't speak to you in some way, shape, or form, you get, like... Again, I have a very solid belief system now, but I had to get out and develop it on my own based on what I was taught when I was little. And people often will say, well, you just pick and choose what you want to believe. I don't. I completely believe everything the Bible tells you. I just don't buy into, I've got to be this judgmental bitch to get it across.
Right.
All right. I mean, that's the thing, is like, I don't believe in that. And I don't believe that I have, when he said church people are people too to me, circling back around to that, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was a pretty strong statement, because what he was telling me more about himself than he was that situation. He was basically saying, look, all I can do is sit here and teach you children the best I know, the best way I know. I'm not going to judge you. And he, to this day, I feel like if I picked up the phone and I said, hey, I got a problem, I believe he would, the most non-judgmental way, try to help me out of it and not make me feel like I was a bad kid. And that's what I felt like a lot of times. I hopped out of one frying pan into another, where, yes, I was somewhat sheltered. I was kept out of a lot of trouble, but I still got in very innocent trouble. Like, I remember sitting in ISS for going to see a rated R movie one time. Like, there was plenty of things I got in trouble for. I'm like, but my parents let me do it. Why am I in trouble at school for something I didn't do at school?
Something that's fine at home.
Or, like cheating on, I think, what kid doesn't cheat? I was cheating on a poem one time, and it was like, oh, this is bad, I remember getting into an altercation with somebody outside in the parking lot and it being a big deal. And it was like nothing, we didn't fist fight or anything. It was just words were exchanged. Yeah, I mean, that's what they were calling it, altercation. And I just remember, since she was a member of that church and I wasn't, I got punished worse than she did. But we were both involved in it. That's the stuff I took away when I graduated. I wanted to get so far away from that. And it wasn't anybody's fault over there. It really wasn't. I do think to this day they were very well intended, but your delivery was bad.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that's everybody's experience. I'm saying it's mine. And again, I go back to what I tell my children: if it's how you feel, it's not wrong. Now, how I got to that place, maybe that's worth a discussion some other time. I don't know. It, again, to this day, it has a lot to do with how I raise my children. Yes, I am getting ready to put one of my children in a Christian school or a religious school. I have talked to so many people who are already out there, and they're like, no, that's not God's love. That what you experienced is not God's love. But I don't think those people out there came from an ill-intended place. I do think they really, in their head, thought that was the best way to rear children for some reason. I don't know.
I think that my parents, my brother told me one time, he said they did the best that they could do here.
Oh
and
my gosh, yes. I tell
that.
my brother and sister that all the time. They did the best they could.
Yeah.
And now that I'm a parent, I understand that mistakes were made.
Yeah.
But they did the absolute best they could by us. And I don't think anything, again, I think the teachers out there were the same way. I'm just telling you from my standpoint, my little teenage standpoint, I decided to take it a different way and totally rebel against it. I think you did too, though.
Well, and here's the thing, though. My mom and dad, so I have an older brother and sister. My brother was 10 years older than me and my sister's 8. The way that my mom and dad raised them was completely different than the way I was raised. And my mom used to say, by the time you came along, I was just tired of saying no. And everything was yes. She was like, and it probably was not, wasn't good for you. The thing is that I was not, I will say this for anyone who's listening that may be in that organization or raised the way that I was not raised. I went to all the meetings. They call them meetings, so they don't say service. We went to church service. They're meetings, and I knocked on doors. I did all of that as a kid. But I was given free reign over who my friends were. They let me associate with whoever I wanted to.
Did you ever get to call them friends finally, though? Or did you have to still refer to them as classmates?
After we moved to Kinston, she told me, I'll just put this out there, whatever. Kinston was tough, you know what I mean? And the kid, and so their churches, like you say, I went to church, or it's the Methodist church, or it's, it has some name. So the Jehovah's Witnesses call their churches Kingdom Halls. Mm-hmm. So at the Kingdom Hall, my mom, she said, I knew that you weren't happy, and I knew that there weren't any kids there that were like you, and read into that what you will. And so she just kind of let me have my friends and, do what I wanted to do. I think that there was a lot of letting me run wild and do what I wanted to do was not good. But then you add in the other element, like I said, of, well, if God's going to destroy me, I'm going to go do what I want to do, and I'm going to enjoy this life. I mean, that was kind of my attitude towards it. I stopped going probably when I got to my teenage years. And that's why I think a lot of people didn't really even know. I kind of kept it to myself. The only people that really knew were like my really close friends. And believe it or not, I was really quiet in school, in like high school. I didn't really, it wasn't until I graduated from Kinston High, and I don't know what happened. Like, I just became very social and was like, I'm going to go know everybody I can. And I've had my regrets over that at times. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, Kinston's a small town, so it's not really hard to know everybody if you try hard. But anyway, I, just decided
Did you ever get to a point where you just didn't want to try anymore? Because I'm circling
with
back to
religion?
No, just like being everybody's friend around there. As far as growing up there.
Growing up was
because
hard.
You made an interesting point, like if you weren't born there. See, I was born there, and I never felt like I belonged to that crowd.
There's a lot of people that feel that way. I've talked
and
to people.
I got to the point where I didn't want to because I was watching their actions.
Yes.
I was very big.
Because it wasn't based on...
They were horrible people.
They were, and it wasn't based on anything like... I'm not going to name names.
Nope.
I'll just say, I was at a person's house one time, and they said to me, well, your parents have a nice house and have nice cars and you dress really nice, which I'll say, I did dress really nice. You should come hang out with us. And I said, so you mean to tell me that that's the only thing that connects you guys is clothes and material things? And I was like, I'm good. I might have a couple of friends, but they were real. Like I had two best friends, that I hung out with growing up, from 8th grade on. And that's who I kind of really, because my brother and sister were so much older than me at the time, my friends really became like my family. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'd rather hang out with, and I'm not saying that following that and making friends with other people, that they were any more real. I'm just saying that at least I never felt like the connection I had with these other individuals was based on what I was wearing or what my mom and dad were driving.
Well, and that's the thing is,
lived.
I think the difference between me and my brother and sister was, when we're all 3 years apart, is that they were part of a crowd, or they were allowed to be part of a crowd, so to speak. And I don't even think these kids even knew that this was happening. But it's, I mean, now that you take yourself out of it and kind of look back, you're right, because my parents, for a fair amount of my formative years, were working hard to, I mean, really working their asses off to build something. I think when we moved to Woodbury, I was in the 6th grade, and by that time, if you had not, like, if you got through Bynum, and if you had not developed these relationships with people or pissed them off in the least little bit, you were out. And it was, and I don't even think they realized they were doing it, but it was. I fought for so long to be part of a crowd that now you couldn't pay me to go back and be part of.
And you know what's sad is that there's a lot of folks that are still caught up in the who's who.
Yep.
And this is who I hang with. They would not dare comment on anything that I post or run a story on Instagram or Facebook. Which
and that's
is why
fine.
I'm so
I mean,
thankful
because
the people who have liked our
oh
Facebook
my gosh,
page,
we are
Instagram,
so thankful
you know
for that,
mean?
because it does show. It shows your true. It really does show your true colors.
I see you looking at the story. I see y'all. I do, and it's all good. You ain't got to comment on my post.
That's fine. Keep scrolling.
That's right.
Keep right on walking, just like you did back in junior high.
But I see you. You're not hiding at all.
They probably never thought we'd have anything constructive to say or do, for that matter. I mean, I really don't think. When we were talking about superlatives last week, I didn't get any. I did not get. I would not have gotten any of those had I finished at Kinston High. I didn't get any at the private school I went to. But I don't. I looking back, I didn't need any of that. No. I didn't.
The validation.
I wanted it so bad for so long until it got to the point where I was like, you know what?
To be the cool kid.
I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna go be me.
It's all irrelevant.
And being me turned out to be like, okay, I'm gonna go find who I am. And then it was like a poor life choice after poor life choice after poor life choice.
But walk that back a little bit, back to the conversation about religion. So the other thing is, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I'll compare it to the 3 or so years that I went to like a mainstream Christianity, like a church. I felt like too, when you're in the Jehovah's Witness organization, you're constantly being policed by your peers. Okay, and there's so much.
What, inside the church, or
inside the church? So if someone saw you out, if you dropped a cuss word, or I watched an R-rated movie.
Oh, that was the same thing at the private Christian school.
Somebody was going to run.
Oh, they're going to go tell it.
They're going to run tell it. And again, I was like, when I started going to church, and maybe this was an internal thing with me, I felt like when I was around people, I couldn't just say whatever the fuck I wanted to say. You know what I'm saying? Like, and here's the thing, like, if you can't, it took me, I was like, no, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to watch my P's and Q's. Like, I'm going to say whatever the fuck I'm going to say, and either you're going to like it or you're just going to get the fuck out.
Or don't.
I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not. I mean, I want people in my life who are real, who are not going to, you can't say that. No, it ain't work. It ain't going to work.
Yeah. Well, I built an entire career off being authentic.
That's it.
People want real people. Yes. And I felt like, okay, so me trying to keep up with you is not going to get me anywhere. And I think I finally realized that about my 30s. When I was, Taryn and Evan asked me a lot, like, what happened to you and Dad? And we just aren't the same people we were in our 20s. We were not. And there's, you know what? It didn't work. Right. And now there's a whole lot more I could say on that matter. But for their ears.
Save that for another day.
I would never put that out there publicly because of them two. Now
yes,
him,
of course.
But it doesn't make him wrong for changing, because I changed too. Yeah. And it is okay. It's okay to make that kind of mistake. I got the two best parts of him. He's got the two best parts of me, and that's all you need to understand.
Right.
So we're not going to get into the bashing. We're not going to do that. Mistakes were made, and that's all I'm going to say.
Right.
But when you circle that back around to could it have been prevented? I don't know that I want to prevent it. And I would like, could that mistake could it have been prevented? Probably, but I don't know that I want it to, because I wouldn't have Taryn and Evan if it did.
Right.
So it's very hard for me to say that I'm sorry I did this or I'm sorry I did that, when all of that is what it took to get me to be an authentic person. Where I finally started shedding and saying, you know what, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do and fall in line and be conformative to what you feel like I should be. I'm going to be myself.
Yes.
And I do feel like when people ask me, especially on panels and things like that, when I speak publicly for the company I work with, I feel like that's probably a big way people relate to me, is like, she is not about the bullshit. No. She's cut it all back, and she's telling you exactly how she feels and what her truth is. And it doesn't have to line up with what your truth is. It's my truth.
After I came out of where I was, you just there's a rabbit hole that you go down, and
do you not kind of like,
yeah,
now just exhale and
like what you were saying about, you have Taryn and you have Evan, and the way I look at it is that even though Melissa's not here anymore, because I have asked myself, and this is going to sound bad, there's only one way to word it though, was that true love? And the reason I say that is because we were both raised in this thing that wasn't true.
Yeah.
But I know how I felt about all of what we went through, and I know that it was true love. But in the thing out of all of it is, I got Maddie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like that's the beautiful thing of it. As far as where I am now, I came out, and I think that I immediately jumped into something else. I took a few months, and then I started going to church, and then I kind of formed my opinions on, how I feel about that. So where I am now, I'm not anti-church or anti-religion. I would say that I am against organized religion, and I think that God can dwell wherever you want Him to. I don't think that it has to be within the four walls of a church where I have to go every Sunday and be chastised because I'm not giving you my money. I'm just not up. I just can't. I mean, from the social aspect, and like I say, the MTV Unplugged for Jesus, the feel good, like that's great, but you're not going to stand up there and berate me in all the theatrics. I just can't with the theatrics. Like, we're not doing that.
It took a lot for me to decide to put my youngest in a religious school.
Oh, and I'm not judging.
Oh no, I'm not judging. As he's like, Kelly. It did take a lot because of my past experience with religious school. However, I think at the end of the day, because it took a lot for me to convince my husband too, because he's very pro public school and just giving them the best chance they can. I think for a female coming up on middle school was rough. I don't think it even matters where you're at.
It doesn't.
Middle school is just hell.
It's gonna be rough.
It's hell.
And girls.
Oh my gosh, they're evil. They're evil, and you can't. There's not but so much you can do to protect your children from that. They have to go through it and experience it. But as a mother watching that, it's gut wrenching because there's very little you can do. The real world will chew them up and spit them out if they don't go through a fair amount of that and learn coping mechanisms.
Strong.
Yes.
And to have
thick
skin.
And the thing is, we didn't get to go to therapists back in the day and talk about our feelings. We just didn't.
No,
we just got our asses beat. I mean, that's the thing is, like, you want to talk about your feelings? Come on over here. Let's talk about your feelings.
You can't do that now.
No, you can't. Well, I mean, you can, but
Don't beat them in Walmart.
I think any of the three of mine, if given the option between a beating or me taking your phone away, they take the beating. They take the beating all day long.
Lord, don't take that phone or that tablet.
That's
like
complete
crap.
meltdown. So I mean, that's the thing is, you find different ways to punish your children these days than our parents did. I just did not want a spanking, so it didn't stop me from getting them, because it didn't stop me from doing things to get them.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I made the decision to put her somewhere based on that. Based on, okay, look, I got to start somewhere. We got to try. We got to try. And maybe her experience won't be the same as mine, but we got to try. So, again, this year will tell the tale.
I think that we both, I think this discussion has to be continued, because I think there's so much more. I mean, when it comes to the religion and how it was raised, I mean, I want to share it because I think it's important, but there's so much more to it. So we'll just save that for the next episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
This episode of You Can't Sit With Us podcast is brought to you by Spicer Financial. Spicer Financial is a financial services agency that specializes in life insurance and other financial needs. If you or someone you know is looking to obtain life insurance, please email me at kspicer@allstate.com or call me at 919-738-2156. Again, that's kspicer@allstate.com or call me at 919-738-2156. Thank you.